Good morning, listeners. You're welcome to this week's Ag Report. I'm Jim Finn. First of all, this morning I want to wish you all a very happy new year. And later on, I will be discussing the past 4 years and a little bit of just 1 year with the two chairpersons of the IFA in Tipperary. My first guest this morning is Conor Kavanagh from Teagasc. Good morning, Conor, and thanks very much for joining us.
Good morning, Jim. Great to be back on the show.
Great to be back. A new year has begun. I wonder, will it be anything like the one that's just gone by? We got some shocks, didn't we, in 2025?
Yeah, there's been a lot of shocks across the year in 2025.
No doubt, and one of them in your particular area, and that's on tillage farms. Tillage farmers probably did the worst in 2025.
Yeah, for what was a very positive year in the dairy and livestock sectors, unfortunately, tillage didn't fare out as well with a relatively poor grain price based on cheap imported grain. It wasn't overly favourable, and I suppose yields were actually reasonably good this year, but the bottom line was the price wasn't there to match the yields to leave a good return for farmers. In terms of production, I suppose the likes of your winter oilseed rape would have done quite well, and your protein crop, the likes of your beans, yielded quite well, and the protein payment there left a good return for farmers. But in terms of cereal production, unfortunately, winter cereals along with your spring cereals didn't leave a good return. So I suppose something that farmers are really going to have to look at for the coming year is the cost of production in producing these grains, the cost of sprays, so your fungicides, your herbicides. You really have to look at only putting on what's actually required by the crop at a given time, and also look at your fertilizer application, so maybe targeting fertilizer applications at the correct timing and only putting on exactly what the crop will need.
That's very important and good advice for the year coming up. But, and talking about the year coming up, was there much winter cereals planted?
Yeah, well, Jim, as you were aware, last autumn there, September and October were two particularly dry months, and there was a lot of winter cereals put into the ground, and we're kind of after getting a washout now for all of November and December. So there was a lot of winter barley, winter wheat, some rye, some winter oilseed rape, all put into the ground in the autumn. And they've actually come through the year quite well, maybe apart from one or two patches in very waterlogged soils after all the wet weather. But in general, crops are looking quite favourable. There will a small bit of yellowing start to come into some of the winter barley now, and I suppose I'd just be advising farmers maybe to hold off a little bit longer on the early nitrogen application, maybe wait till we get into the month of February before going with the first litre of nitrogen, as I suppose ground is quite waterlogged. You don't want to be putting out nitrogen when it could be leached into some of the water courses.
Okay, so your advice is to wait for some really good dry weather, February, and then spread nitrogen on cereals. So that's good advice. Was there much crop covers planted in the autumn?
Yeah, well, I suppose cover crops have become very popular through the Acre scheme, and there was a new scheme launched this year. It was the Farming for Water scheme, where it paid farmers to put in these cover crops, and so the cover crops have to remain in situ until the 1st of January, which is just gone, and basically it can then be grazed lightly with livestock, or can be the seedbed can start to be prepared for the sowing of spring cereals. What I would encourage farmers to do is not to maybe go in and I suppose desiccate the cover crop straight away. Maybe leave it until maybe a month or 6 weeks before you're planning on setting your spring corn, because having done all the good work putting in the cover crop, getting a good green cover established, there's no point in having bare soil there in the month of January or February, whereas the spring corn might not be set until the middle of March. So I'd be saying leave the green cover in situ. It's holding on to a lot of nutrients in the soil. It's protecting the soil. It's preventing soil erosion, and it's preventing the leaching of nutrients into watercourse. So they're actually providing an awful lot of benefits there. So regulations of the scheme is they have to remain in place until the 1st of January. But I would be encouraging farmers maybe not to go in and burn them off or disc them back into the soil until maybe 4 to 6 weeks before you're planning on sowing a crop into that field. And in terms of getting rid of these cover crops, some farmers would use glyphosate, but some farmers would go out and maybe give them a run of a roller or a disc on a frosty morning. It will just help to break down the level of material in it for preparing the seed bed.
And is there any merit in bringing in a plough and ploughing it maybe at 4 to 6 inches?
Yeah, well, generally with a lot of the cover crops, there's too much green material for a plough to work. So many farmers would often maybe roll them or disc them and then maybe plough them down.
Yeah, okay, because you'd be putting back a lot of organic matter back into the soil, wouldn't you?
You would be, yeah, which would be very beneficial for the following crops.
Okay, one of the things that affects barley quite a lot is yellow dwarf virus. Teagasc have been doing research on this. Have we any results from that research yet, Conor?
Yeah, well, I suppose the big thing is with the barley yellow dwarf virus is there's a lot of winter barley in the ground, and the fact that the weather has been quite mild and wet, that I am seeing aphids in field. So I suppose what I would be encouraging farmers to do is maybe have a look under the leaf and some plants in the field, and if you are seeing a number of aphids under them, it might warrant a treatment. But I suppose what the research is kind of showing that basically that a lot of the barley varieties that are sown now are either tolerant or resistant to the barley yellow dwarf virus. So these would not require a second parathyroid treatment. But some of the varieties that have said that aren't tolerant or resistant, if the weather does remain quite mild, it may actually warrant a second treatment in January.
Okay. Then, staying with the tillage for the moment anyway, what jobs needs to be done in January on tillage farms?
Yeah, well, I suppose the first thing is maybe getting a fertiliser plan in place. With the new fertiliser register now, all fertiliser that you purchased is up on the department's website. So it's vitally important for farmers to have a fertiliser plan in place. And I suppose in order to get one of these completed, you must have soil samples taken to basically allow you know what P&K applications are required in the farm. So basically, you must have one sample for every 5 hectares, and they should be taken to a depth of roughly 10 to 12 centimetres. So basically, it'll give you a good representation of the indexes in the field. And secondly, is looking at maybe what crops you want to be planting in the spring, and maybe starting having seed ordered and seed ready to go in the springtime for when the busy period starts. And also any machinery that are parked up inside the shed, that they should all be serviced and put away and get ready for a busy spring period.
Okay, and before I let you go, a couple of other questions I'd like to ask you. Coming up to a very busy time on livestock farms, Conor, what should farmers do to prepare for the calving season?
Yeah, you're right, Jim. Look, we are coming up into a very, very busy period. I suppose the first thing that's vitally important is that farmers have the tags ordered and ready to go in the springtime, because it can be a nightmare for farmers if they have 10, 15 cows starting to calve and they've no tags to put in the calves ears. So having tags ordered and in the yard ready to go for calving time, I suppose that a good percentage of farmers now are using calving cameras. So basically just make sure the calving cameras are working. A lot of people wouldn't have maybe logged into them or checked them until, say, last year's calving season, so just making sure the calving cameras are still working efficiently. And I suppose just having all the relevant equipment ready to go for the calving season. So the likes of your calving jack, your calving ropes, your lube, I suppose, and just having different things ready and on hand if they're needed. And the likes of your calcium and magnesium bottles there, if cows do come down with maybe grass technique, just to have them on farm ready to go.
Right, good advice there too. Now, you have some upcoming tillage events. Can you give us some details on those?
Yes, 2 spring tillage seminars coming up in the month of January. So the first one is on the 20th of January, which is the 20th of January, which is on in the Clonmel office there at 7:30 in the evening time. And the second one then is on in the Teagasc office in Neenah, and that's on the January 22nd at 10 o'clock. And I suppose it'll be just going through, I suppose, what to look at for the coming year, looking at your cereal varieties, your crop agronomy, fertiliser, and some of the new regulations that are in place that farmers have to abide by. And I suppose it's a vital, it's vital information that farmers, when the price of grain isn't as optimistic as you'd like, it's vital that farmers maybe attend these events and maybe look at where they can save money in terms of sprays and fertiliser, and maybe reduce the cost of actually growing the crop if at all possible. That will leave more money in the farmers' pockets.
Okay, just before you go, can you just give those 2 dates again for tillage farmers?
Yeah, the first one is January the 20th, which is Tuesday evening, January the 20th at 7:30 in the Teagasc office in Clonmel. And the second one is January 22nd in the Teagasc office in Nina at 10 o'clock.
At that, we'll leave it for this morning, Conor. Thanks very much for joining us. That listener was Conor Kavanagh from Teagasc. Listeners, as I said at the top of the programme, that I would have the 2 chairpersons of the IFA in Tipperary with me this morning, and I have both of them. I have Baden Pole from North Tipperary and I have Pat Carroll from South Tipperary. But both of them, years as chairs are up, and we'll have 2 new chairs this time next year. Let's first of all look back on 4 years as chairs of the IFA in Tipperary, and I'll come to you first, Pat. Looking back over the 4 years, when did you really come into power?
Yeah, Jim, I suppose it was for 2022, January 2022, I began my term as county chair. I replaced Erica O'Keefe. She was the outgoing chair at that time. It was a challenge. It was looking forward to the opportunity. It's not every day you get an opportunity to represent your county and represent the farmers. So, look, I was privileged to get that opportunity and look, after having the 4 years. And I suppose the one great thing within IFA taking up such a position is you know your term. You do your term to the best of your ability, and you can't go back in as county chair. So you do the best you can. And look, I'm delighted that I did it.
Right, okay. And you, Baden?
Yeah, I was a couple of months after Pat. I went in March. I went in after Imelda Walsh, and it was a very hard thing to reach her standards. But and I was also new to the game. I hadn't come through doing officer positions in IFA, so I was definitely came in and I had to quick learn, and but. And I also, I suppose, it was lucky in one sense because we had the national president at the time. We had Tim Culnan as president, so everything kind of. And Tim was always great. He'd ring me for bits, and I'd ring him for bits. So that was how it went. Look, we were also, I'd say Pat will agree, the one thing that we were lucky with, and whoever will replace us, is the commodities were all pretty good, bar tillage, so we weren't under the force to go to factory gates or processors gates, so that was one thing we didn't have to worry about.
Yeah, you came in just after COVID. We were coming out of COVID. Did you feel that in any way hindered you, Pat?
Well, it was challenging. At that time, a lot of meetings were taking place online. And that was a challenge to engage with people, and I suppose having gone back now to in-person meetings, we realise the importance of being able to sit down with people and talk to people face to face, because you get a better understanding of how you're getting your message across or how you're receiving the message. So that was a challenge at the time. But I suppose the fact that we were coming out of COVID was such a positive. We just dealt with it and got on with it. It was different times. It's hard to believe it's 4 years ago now, but it's amazing the way you settle back in and get back into a routine.
And did you hold not necessarily national council meetings or your own executive meetings? They were probably held in person, but did a lot of subcommittee meetings happen online?
Yeah, well, the county officers' meetings probably started off online, but I was lucky enough our county executive meetings at that stage were allowed to go ahead in person. So we were working away. It was only an odd officers' meeting and that. So the majority of meetings were in person. But then other organisations and county councils and other dealings we'd have at other committees and that, a lot of them remained online and to this day are still online, and maybe have 1 or 2 out of 7 or 8 in a year are in person, and that change is there. And I suppose that has helped in a way for the workload too, because for some of those meetings, they are working quite well online, where otherwise you would have to travel journeys on an ongoing basis for a lot of these things. So there was changes, and those changes have been progressive as well.
Yeah, which is good. And Baden, with you, had you many online meetings or?
No, thankfully not.
Okay.
I didn't, but I could see how the online era in IFA did benefit for, and through National Council and everything, on specific topics when something needed to be addressed, and an online meeting could be held within a matter of minutes nearly, or if there was an emergency, and it meant that we could all get on and deal with it rather than everyone having to pick trips to Dublin, and yeah, it was very, very handy that way.
And did you find, Baden, that it took up a lot of your time? Yeah, I know. It's very difficult. Now, Pat has said it, that it's an honour to do it. It's great to have it done. It's great that it only lasts for 4 years. But there's a hell of a lot of travelling. And time away from your farm.
Yeah, an awful lot of time away from the farm. I'd say certain sectors of my farm did suffer in the 4 years, but Pat's lucky he has his replacement in now at this stage. Mine hasn't. I don't want to frighten them off. I think I have a couple of people lined up. So but where I found it is, if you could get in on a topic in the morning with someone ringing with a problem, it could take you till nearly dinner time by the time you get the nuts and bolts of it sorted. And that was probably the frustrating thing, because if you really tried to tease something out, a lot of time could go. That was it.
Yeah. If I was to ask you then, what would you put down as being the highlight of the 4 years?
Oh, well, it's very easy for me, Jim. That is, and it took a lot of work, but I was lucky. It was lucky, but it was the Splash Plate campaign in Upper Church. We would call it Upper Church because we had the first meeting in Upper Church, and the big crowd came to Upper Church, and all the political councillors all contributed, TDs, and it just got momentum, and then it kind of died away for a while, and we stayed, and there was a core of people that stayed beating the drum, and I'd say people were sick of me bringing up Splash Plate in National Council, but it had to be done, and it was very. I was almost shocked to see it included in the Nitrates Action Plan in the draft, and then it was kind of maybe a 5-week wait to see it in the actual Nitrates Action Plan. It was a great achievement for one county, because we pushed. There was, I don't think I'll start mentioning names, but there was about 5 or 6 people who really, really pushed, and they stayed at it, and and some very clever people who sat around when, I'd say a turning point when the thing looked dead was digging out the German legislation of what they did for the hill farmers down in southern Germany, and to be able to put that to the Taoiseach and Taoiseach was a great. So I was lucky to achieve it. In my time, it's definitely the highlight.
Well, you're right to say that it went dead for a while, but it seemed to have resurrected itself at the National Ploughing Championship. If my memory serves me correct, and there was some team there from Tipperary doing a lot of pushing on that particular time. And we come to you, Pat, your highlight. Now, I could nearly think of one of your highlights with something, and that was you sitting down with Tipperary County Council.
Yeah, definitely, Jim. Would be certainly one of them. That day we were as part of the Enough is Enough campaign that Francie had, and he's starting off when he started off as president of the IFA, and Baden and myself, we looked to meet the county council. It was happening in executives around the country, so because it was in Clonmel, and that happened to be the meeting in March 24. So we got to present a presentation, and I suppose the presentation predominantly covered the socio and economic value of agriculture to Tipperary. Put quite a bit of work into it, and I suppose as somebody starting out as county chairman, I never thought it would arise or that I would have the opportunity, but I suppose the response and that we got afterwards and from the county council and the councillors and across the board and even from journalists and that, like, we really got a message across and the importance, and we probably see it continues today, the importance of farming and keeping people basically in rural Ireland, and we see the GA are even working on it at the moment as well. So, like, I mean, the importance. So, look, that probably for me to have stood up and the response we got on that day from that, and at a local level like that, like, you know, you would definitely have pride in it. And I suppose the other part of that is, like, as Baden said, like, you could get issues there, you get a phone call, like, and there's a number of hours, but like, where you're able to help somebody out and you get a positive outcome, like, it's exceptionally satisfying. Like, you know, when somebody can get a result and they come back and they're so grateful for it, like, and like, that is so rewarding, and it's the unseen, and we don't talk about those things, but those wins are there and they're really positive.
And of course, you had another major event a couple of weeks ago when you were stepping down. You were able to put a lasso around the manager of the senior hurling team, who spoke very well on the night.
Yeah, look, definitely. Liam Cahill gave a great speech, and an absolute gentleman, and I think even for those present on the night, like, you know, he was very, very humbling to hear what he had to say, and like, even from his own upbringing on a farm and how he brings from his own background to the dressing room, as he said, like, you know, and a lot of that. And it was great too, even for some of the farmers in the room, they quite simply did no question to ask, only to say thanks very much for 2025, which was a lovely response. And yeah, look, we were delighted to have him, and that he was able to give us of his time. Definitely was a highlight, you know, and delighted to have gotten him.
More from Pat and Baden after this short break. You're welcome back. Okay, and you, Baden, you had a pig on a spit for 3 years. And then you, last year or this year, you went away from the pig and the spit, because one of the highlights of the IFA in North Tipperary is the Nina, or the North Tipperary show.
Yeah, well, I didn't know you were going to bring that up now, Jim, but I knew you were disappointed this year when you came in and there wasn't the pig on the spit.
I was very disappointed, to be honest with you.
And look, I always said it. Tim every year voluntary gave us a pig, and it was great. I was also trying to change the thing a little bit, Jim, for when I'd leave, so that, like, my family had a great tradition in Nina Show, always with entries and flowers and stuff, so horses and so I wanted to leave it that it might be a bit easier for who'd follow was part of it, and the farm family committee, the ladies, they took great pride in it as well, and I was trying to set them up, and they did a great job this year with the teas and the cakes, and I just know we had a good bit of the pig left over last year, and I just said maybe it'll come back again. It'll come back. But it takes a fair bit of effort and to organise the pig. And but look, I'd love if I'd had that on my mind to say I hope the IFA tent stays in North Tipperary Show, because it's people come, and if they're tired from walking or whatever, they go in there for a cup of tea and they sit down on a bale of straw and they get a break. And you get a great chance to meet, and even people that they mightn't even display, they might have issues, and they mightn't bring them up on the day. But once they get comfortable with you chatting, they know they can ring you in a week's time or something like that. And it's great for IFA to show a presence. And I'd like to talk on that a bit more, where I had two highlights within my time as to where I felt IFA met. We can do it later. Or
no, you can keep going.
Yeah, well, it was the day that we challenged Martin Hayden. He was only a junior minister at the time. He was canvassing in Nina Mart, and we caught him for 20 minutes up in the boardroom of Central Auctions, and we all lobbied him. That day in particular, what I noticed afterwards, back in the canteen, the buzz that was in the canteen from seeing that, you know, there was a government minister there, IFA were there engaging with them, they could see a bit of leadership. There was just a buzz around the canteen, which was all very healthy. And this year then, it was you would have done Thurles with the health checks, probably, and it's similar in the Martin Nina, and Teresa Roach came down because it was a mix. McCree and IFA were involved in setting them up, and the amount of extra people that get them into the mart for the health checks, and it's kind of Teresa went around and charmed the lads around the ring. But the flow was continuous all day. But what I noticed was the atmosphere in the canteen. Farmers were happy, and I think it's an area that I think IFA could grow if they did one day a month, maybe running a little clinic, or that someone could come in there and use it as a workshop that they could, if they had a problem, they could share it. And I just feel it's a very central place, and I just felt it was 2 great days where it all happened naturally.
Okay, would you have another one stuck up your sleeve now that you would like? You mentioned Thurles. Were you in Thurles for the health check?
No, we had it was in Care Mart
Okay.
that day, and yeah, look, it was a very, very positive day. The amount of people that came in, there was, I think, just 4 nurses there in June, and I actually spoke to a farmer afterwards that accidentally was in and realised it was there and realised there was an issue and followed it up and thankfully got it in time. And so like they're really positive to hear, and it's just great to see how well they were run and organised. And like, you really have to thank the Farm Family Committee. Like in South Tip, it was PJ English put in a lot of time there as a member of the Farm Family Committee. Like, so it was a very, very positive outcome, and it was great to see it. Like, and hopefully it'll be done again into the future.
Yeah, and a question from both of you, which any one of you can answer it. After your 4 years, do you feel that the IFA has weathered the storm that we had, not 10 years ago or thereabouts, and that it's now stronger than ever? I see from the annual returns that nationally income is up considerably. You've had a good year. So does the same apply to Tipperary?
Look, I think IFA is bigger than the people that are in it. The importance of the organisation, and we've seen it different events throughout the last number of years, and when the shoulder is put to the wheel, like it is a serious organisation. And the one thing I have seen from behind the scenes, and Baden mentioned there lobbying Martin Hayden as a junior minister, like lobbying is what we do and what we're good at as an organisation, and making them, but also professional at it. Like, I mean, we're very lucky in this country, and it's unique that we have the access that we have to our politicians. So to be able to use that to our best ability, no matter where we meet them, and we can engage with them, and that is quite positive. But as regards weathering the storm, I do believe like we're a lot further down the road. We're a different organisation than we were 10 years ago, and you have to keep evolving. You have to change, and that's why it's important even us changing and new people, fresh blood coming in. And it's the same way when the president, deputy president out the door, they're term done, they're finished, and new blood comes in. Like, all that is important too, because that keeps the organisation fresh and keeps it moving and evolving.
And do we have a rising star in Tipperary now? You know, you're 2 stars, now you're on the way down. Do we have a rising star? Or do either of the two of you have any ambition to move further up the ladder in IFA?
Well, I was total green to it all, Jim, when I went in. I found it brilliant, though, the effect that the agri-politics and the positive nature of what it has. And if IFA didn't do it, no one would, you know. Now, I shouldn't say there's other organisations there, but I think the power of that. And I also think, partly on what you asked, Pat, there's, it's probably harder to get people into executives, but the world has changed. Like, for the last, as we were speaking there, the amount of updates you get on social media, everyone has information very, very fast. Towards years ago, they would have had to go to the IFA executive, and they would have been the first to hear the information at the executive. But that time has changed. But I think the membership, they're happy to pay their membership because they know someone is looking after things. You know, they mightn't want an active role in IFA, in the executive, but they're very happy to stay working on their farms and knowing that there's someone keeping an eye on things, and someone's. That's where I feel it is. You know, they don't really want to spend the time in IFA, but they're happy that someone else is doing the job. So to keep those people interested, the up and coming future leaders, and there's a program on that, and you know, and it's good. I've identified 2 now, and I was just going around doing the branch AGMs. I was impressed with 2. I'll let Pat come in on. In the past, I identified Ciara Ryan from Temple Derry. Her mother was always good to me in the branch in Temple Derry. But Ciara now has gone in, and we wish her the very best of luck in Thurles as the new manager. And it's a responsible job for a young girl, and she'll be well capable for it, and I hope people support her. So, you know, it's just, as you say, when you go around seeing rising stars, there's an example of where you can kind of pick them out. You know, you can, you know.
I know. What about South Tip? Always rising stars in South Tip.
I think, I suppose, you're saying what we were thinking, like going ahead from finishing up as county chair. I'd always look at it, you don't ever know what opportunities arise down the road. And like, I mean, if I spent 6 years in the dairy committee before I became county chair, and if you had said to me 5 years ago or 6 years ago, would you do county chair, I would have said no way, because it wouldn't have been the right time, and it wasn't at the time. So like, I'd always be of the opinion, and I would say to anybody, like, you know, you don't ever know until the opportunity arises. There's you know, and if an opportunity arises and it's the right time, so be it. If it's not, that's also fine as well. But I think it's important that people give it the thought and give themselves, maybe, like most organisations are struggling now for voluntary people to put their hand up and say, hey, look, I'll take it on for a while and do the job. And I think that is something that is very important going forward, that we keep that voluntary positions, keep people motivated to come into those positions. And there is an awful lot to gain from being involved in any voluntary organisation, from a personal point of view. So look, from that point of view, and as regards rising stars, there's no shortage of rising stars. There's plenty of them out there.
Out there.
There is loads of them.
You go looking for them.
You just have to entice them to put their hand up and come forward.
Yeah. Gentlemen, I have to take another short break, but stay with me, and after the break we'll talk about things that are happening currently that are of national interest. Listeners, we're back after that short break. Okay, let's move away then from your 4 years each, and let's look back on the year that's just gone. An interesting year.
Yeah, well, I'll leave dairy to Pat, because that's his, and I'll talk a bit about beef. Sheep have been at kind of a steady high, but beef, it's been phenomenal. It's been phenomenal, and that doesn't mean it's all good.
I know.
Because the value of cattle rose to such an extent, it became nearly like you needed to be either have a good relationship with a bank manager, or you had to keep turning your stock very quick to keep up with the values of where they had grown into. Probably the men that suffered were the men last November who felt cattle prices were getting a bit high. They'd wait till the spring to buy, and it didn't work out like that. And then even as each month went along, you were better off to stay buying in stock, because they rose and rose and rose. And I said it about, I don't know where I was speaking 2 months ago, I said, it's my gut feel that this is the last of the hype. And it's kind of, we're after coming back down a bit. I don't think we'll see the rises that came, but it has been exceptional times for beef, as in, and what's really been the winners in it, and they deserve to be the winners in it, because they had been beaten with a stick from all angles, was the suckler farmer. They were encouraged to get out. They were being told it wasn't the right, you should be rearing the dairy calf, and they nearly felt, even if they had good books at home, good profits, they nearly felt embarrassed that they had a suckler herd. And there was a lot of clearance sales which shouldn't have happened, but the men that stuck at it made great money.
Right, let's come to the dairy.
Yeah, sure, look, I suppose as Baden said, like with the beef, the word here is volatility. It's whether it is the very highs or the very lows. The challenges are to try and manage those, and the changes they bring and the challenges they bring. Unfortunately, we're going to see more and more of it, volatility. That is the nature of it. As they say, nothing kills a high price like a high price. And supply and demand, that's where it's at. And I suppose the other side of it, as we talk, during our 4 years, I suppose the invasion of Ukraine by Russia has absolutely changed completely our input costs across the board, which are just as volatile now as our output prices. So trying to get a margin in the middle, at the end of the day, regardless of what we're getting for our product, it's the margin that counts. And it's the cost of inputs and how they have changed, and how it costs a lot of money now, whether it's to stock a farm, it costs a lot of money to run a farm. Buying inputs, there's a certain amount of risk involved in it. So, but at the end of the day, it's about margin, and if you can make a margin at a lower price, well, so be it. But as I suppose the other part on the dairy side of it, this year, predominantly for dairy, but it affected all sectors, was the derogation. And I think if we come back, if we talk about what IFA and what it's capable of doing, the two standout moments this year for me was the Corn Mart for the derogation meeting. There was a gathering, a couple of thousand farmers. There was it was amazing to see tractors, machinery, agri contractors. You had our co-ops or merchants. You had lorries, and it really gave the minister the push on to get on and what was behind it. And I suppose the other event then was in Kildare was the tillage meeting, where over 1,000 farmers turned out in force. Tillage farmers have had an incredibly difficult couple of years, and derogation would have affected them as well, because predominantly a lot of corn grown in South Tipperary is on Conacre, and it was going to be challenging. Derogation would have a huge effect on the land market and where it's going. But like those two occasions, Naas and Corn Mart, that really shows what IFA can do when they put their shoulder to the wheel. And it just goes to show, if you have the issue and farmers are affected, they will come out. Like sometimes it can be challenging to get farmers to get somebody out to a county executive meeting. But by God, when there's trouble ahead and there's an issue, there's no bother in getting the numbers out, and that's what gives IFA the power. It's those numbers. That's what gives you the political clout, that you can get out those numbers on the ground, because that's what puts the pressure on the politicians.
Baden, you want to say a few words about derogation?
I just want to say that Pat's after covering a fair bit of it, but I felt myself, everyone thought derogation wouldn't happen. But I have to secretly say, I went down with Liam Coffey and Joe Dwyer and myself. We went down the road together to Corn. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant display. I thought Francie Gorman, our president's performance on the night, was just outstanding. The way he kept coming back in, questioning the minister, and without having a row with him, he kept back in. And I came back up the road confident. I said, lads, I think this is going to happen, and it did. And I just thought it was a fantastic watershed for IFA to pull that one off, because, as Pat said, there was going to be, if a dairy farmer wanted to stay, and predominantly there might be a few beef farmers stocked to that level, but if the dairy farmer wanted to stay farming at the level and the cow numbers that he was going to have to make another grab for land, and it was going to set farmer against farmer and communities. It was going to not help community relations, and I think it's for that reason alone it's brilliant.
Okay, the other big issue this year has been Mercosur, very much in the news these days, and again the IFA were very successful in their campaigns, and particularly when they joined forces with their sister organisations across Europe.
Yeah, well, I was out there last Thursday, Jim. It was one. We flew out early in the morning. We flew back that night, and it was on to see the main thoroughfare. The length that we walked, we must have been walking for 2 hours. Where we marched through Brussels, and we ended up not getting quite to where we wanted to, because the it got too rough. The police cordoned it off, and everyone has all the videos of that, and the journalists loved getting those shots. But as regards the main protest that was held by Copa Copicha, was a peaceful protest. But there was kind of side shoots who out in Europe kind of love doing what they do, and but I know one man went down to have a look, but he came back with his eyes burnt with tear gas, so it wasn't the place.
Well, they don't take too many prisoners in Brussels when there's a demonstration that goes against the grain as far as Belgian police are concerned.
But Jim, I want to rather than getting away with the theatricalness of was like it is not right that food should be coming into Europe to a way below standard than what we have to. We're proudly producing our product here for. It's 30 years ago since there was, is it 40 years ago since there was any hormones in meat here, and to think that you would open the gates for that type of meat to come back into Europe, and it's not that you're not against the trade agreement. Trade agreements would be all good, but you have to have it as a level playing field. You can't be bringing in something sub standard in, and then there's the whole thing of antibiotic resistance, and it's hard enough to keep people well, but like if you build antibiotic resistance into the human health, it's very serious.
I think I asked TJ Maher this particular question a few weeks ago, particularly with regard to what has come in, or has been found to come into Europe from South America. Where, Pat, are we at now? Now, we know that decision, they didn't make the decision in December that we expected. Now we're expecting something in January. And I suppose we know that the final decision, when Parliament get an opportunity to vote on it, it's going to be sometime March or April. So where are we really at?
Well, I do think, right, okay, I suppose if we look at Mercosur and the importance of it to Europe and to the industrialists of Europe, I suppose what Mercosur is highlighting is the panic that is there within Europe as regards trade agreements and trying to get trade done. And partly the issue in Europe, and it's something we're dealing with all the time when we speak about, is bureaucracy and red tape. And the cost of doing business across the board all over across Europe, because of the stipulations from Brussels and the Commission, means we're uncompetitive in the world market as regards producing any products. Like you can take, like they're looking to bring in South American food into Europe because it's a fraction of the cost, because they're a fraction of the bureaucracy, red tape, and standards. Now I don't believe we should give up our standards, not for 1 second, and our consumers are assuming everything they're eating is of the same standard. But the bureaucracy and red tape has made Europe so uncompetitive. They're now looking for scraps to try and do trade, and to trade with countries anywhere they can, because they've been showing up now for where they're at. Their cost base is way off the mark, and they need to move now to sell product, because China, America, they've all moved ahead. They've all moved on and left us behind in Europe.
I suppose we can expect that Mercosur will get through before mid-2026. Would that be right?
Depends. At the moment, there's they nearly have a blocking minority. It depends what deals they do with Italy over Christmas. If Italy goes on board, does Ireland stay isolated? I don't know. Would it look good that there was one country in Europe who? But like as I said, if we can't accept product coming in that's not of equal standards. It's simple as that. And I think the Irish people will. I think they'll they won't settle for it. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're done and dusted, but one final question to both of you. Did you enjoy the 4 years, Pat?
Definitely. Enjoyed it very much. I also enjoyed finishing my 4 years. It is just hard work, hard going. when you're keeping a farm going, and I'm looking forward to going back to being a full-time farmer again. And I suppose I'm very lucky that my family, my wife, held the reins and was the backup there. I certainly couldn't have done it with on the type of farming I'm doing, without that backup. But no, I 100% enjoyed it. I definitely have no regrets, and I'm going on the farm business committee, so I'll still be there or thereabouts.
Still be there or thereabouts. Bad?
I've no plans. I'm looking forward to a break from it, really, and I do think the idea, the fresh blood. You couldn't do any longer. The 4 years, even though you might feel you're getting more experience, but you lose the energy.
You still have 6 weeks to go on.
That could be a tough 6 weeks with Mercosur now. But I would say. What I did learn was from farmers do ring you when they ring you. They don't ring you until they're in real trouble, until they're really, and they can be really. And for down the line when farmers do ring, for help or an explanation on something, they ring and they're totally wound up. And if you can ride out the first few minutes with them and then just get to see where common sense lies and get to talk to them, and they come. But it's kind of sometimes hard to be on a good day all the time yourself, to deal with. But that's what I'd like to say is that whoever rings in, just beware that the man you're ringing might, he needs time to adjust to what the level of pitch that the problem is. And
he could be on a bad day too.
He's definitely on a bad day. Yeah.
But I suppose as well as that, Jim, the other side of it, I suppose you make great friends. There've been a lot of people we've been trucking with for 4 years in National Council, and you know what I mean. There's a lot of camaraderie there, and I often say if I got broke down in any county in the country, you'd have somebody to ring, which is fantastic. To have to meet and mix with so many people.
Yeah. Well, okay. Look, before we go, I want to thank both of you sincerely for being so generous with your time to me as the presenter of Ag Report and Tip FM. It's been always a pleasure talking to both of you, and may I wish both of you, no matter what you do into the future, all the best.
Thanks very much, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
That, listeners, is Ag Report for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you'll join me at the same time next week. Coming up next is the news at 10 o'clock, and after that, Eamon Dwyer presents Down Your Way.